Hey, Greysteel, greetings and welcome. Sully here at Greysteel Strength and Conditioning with my friend and coaching associate and colleague, Noah Hayden.
Hi, everybody.
And we're filming the Q&A, or part of the Q&A that we film a couple of times a year. And in addition, we're trying something new today, and that's what this video is. This is our maiden voyage of trying to do form check videos. We thought it might be interesting for you to see how a couple of working coaches look at the lifts and just do some quick online form checks and maybe some commentary on the associated programming and so on. So we've asked some of the people that we know to submit form check videos to us for this maiden voyage, but if you guys like this and we decide we're going to keep going with it, we're going to open it up to anybody and we'll tell you how to do that. But for now, we're just going with a few selected people we know who are thick-skinned and courageous enough to submit their lifting videos to us for analysis. And
it won't be bad.
We hope that you learn something from it. That's right, It won't be bad. So we're going to start, Noah, with Matt, and Matt is yours.
Here's my submission. Hopefully it is usable. My gym space is a bit tight to get good angled recordings. The recording's just fine.
Yeah.
This is my last warm-up before I pulled 305 for a triple. So this is going to be 275 for a single. You know, it's nice when we can have form checks that are more than just one rep.
Absolutely.
But this is fine. Unfortunately, I failed to record the work set. After quitting at 3, I decided to go back for the last 2. Pop went my SI on the first, and I was done. This SI injury has occurred at least 3 times over the years, and I suspect it is a combination of issues arising from my flat feet and less than perfect form. This is from Matt S. So let's watch the video.
Okay. All right, so here we go.
All right.
It's not a bad pull by any means.
No, not at all. I'm going to stop it right when he's in his final setup. All right. So this is right before the bar breaks off the ground. It's a pretty good position, really. I would have you lower your hips just a little bit to allow your knees to come forward just a little bit.
Agreed.
This is not a huge change. It's actually not that common. Most people don't hold their hips really high. They almost always sit down too low into more of like a squat position. You're not doing that, but they're just a little bit high, which is a little bit more work for your back and a little less work for your legs, and it doesn't need to be that way. All right, this is the top position. Your shoulders are just a little too far forward here for my tastes. And also, you know, if we're talking about a lifter that's had issues with their lower back getting tweaked every now and again, this top position, you know, you're almost straight up, but not quite. You're just leaning forward the tiniest bit. That's tough on the lower back.
It really
It's a
is.
lot of work, especially on the SI joint, right? The very bottom of the spine. And if that's right where you're having issues, this isn't a great place to hang out in every time you do a rep.
Yeah, he's working hard to maintain this position.
Right.
And this position at the top, his lockout, it shouldn't be any work at all. It should be the easiest part of the whole thing.
Right, so bring your shoulders back just a touch more. Another thing that might help here too is squeeze your butt together a little bit more, and it'll help drive your hips forward so that your body's in compression instead of you having to do a bunch of muscular work to maintain this top position. Which leads me to my next observation. We won't be able to really see it when I unpause this here, but you never really stop at a resting top position. It's kind of always fluidly in motion, which is also not good. I think that it's better to come to a complete stop at the top.
A dead stop, as it were.
A dead stop, yeah. To sort of separate the two different phases of the lift. See, and right back down.
So let's see if I can set up my screen to share here. So when I look at this video, considering that this is not that heavy a deadlift, you can see, I can tell exactly when the lift starts. We see all that stuff that Noah was talking about, but watch this video and see if you can't tell me exactly when the lift starts. Yes, the hips are a little bit high. I would like the knees a little bit more forward. The back setup isn't bad, but I can tell exactly when he starts to exert effort against the bar. Right there.
Right there, yeah.
Right? So when I watch a master's athlete, an athlete over 50 or 60, who's had a lot of experience, including somebody like you or somebody like me, you almost can't tell when the pull really begins.
Because there's not an increase in effort.
There's just a gradual squeezing and tightening as the setup is putting all the weight into his hands. I can tell when he takes the weight in his hands. So there's a sense in which I call this surprising your back, right? Your back hasn't really, you haven't really baked all the weight into your back yet when you start the pull. So you jerk on the bar. And that's just Newton's third law of motion. If you jerk on the bar, then the bar jerks on you, right? And that's a good time to take a little pop or a tweak or something. That all being said, it would be nice to know, and if you're going to submit a video to us, if we make this a regular thing, which we probably will, and we open it up to the general viewership, and you submit a video to us and it involves some sort of tweak or discomfort, it'd be nice to know exactly when you feel the tweak. So does he feel it here? I mean, he doesn't look uncomfortable on the way up.
Or right at the top.
Or was it right at the top, or was it when he put it down? Actually, none of this looks terribly uncomfortable, although maybe it was during the 305 that he took the tweak.
It was the 305.
It was the 305.
It was after he did the triple, right?
So anyway, it would be nice to know at what point in the lift this happened.
So this is, there's one more point I wanted to make.
Go ahead.
This is a pet peeve I have. When you see lifters, this looks like it's an easy lift for Matt. Clearly he's strong enough to just throw this weight around, and so he is. And this is the pet peeve that I have. When people lift warm-ups like they're warm-ups, and then they lift their work sets differently, because now that's serious, right? So remember, Matt is not practicing lifting 275 here. He's supposed to be practicing for his work set of 305. So he's not lifting this like 305. If 305 is the hardest thing he's ever done.
No.
He's lifting this like it's a walk in the park. And that casualness does not help him prepare for 305, for a set of 5. And so from now on, I would tell Matt that every lift, I mean, even starting at 135, it needs to be treated like it's 385 for the rest of the time. And once you can lift 385, it needs to be treated like 405 for the rest of time. It has to be serious, almost acting, miming, pretending that it's heavier than it is.
I say this in my practice, in my coaching practice all the time. It's like, people grab a 135 warm up and they lift it like they're going to clean it or something, right? And it's like, no, I want you to do an acting job. Pretend that it weighs 400 pounds. Convince me that there's actually 400 pounds on that bar as you lift it.
And then when you get to your work sets, it doesn't surprise your back.
It doesn't surprise you.
Because you're preparing for what that heavy weight getting, slowly getting moving is going to feel like.
So I think, Matt, I think you're a good lifter. Yeah. I think that there's some refinement that's needed here. I agree with Noah's analysis. I think your hips are a little high. You're just not lanky enough a guy to really need to carry your hips that high. So as long as your hips don't have to come up at the start of the lift, so bring your knees just a little bit more forward. That does a couple of things. It establishes your hip at the correct elevation. And the other thing it does is it brings your quads back into the movement, right? If your knees are not forward enough, you're not going to have as much push with your quads as you would like to have for a heavy deadlift.
Which means that you have more muscular responsibility on
the
your
hamstrings
lower back,
and lower back,
which is your problem area here. So, hand off a little bit of that responsibility to the legs.
And then I would ask you to cultivate a lockout where you can just stand there and hold the bar, right? Where there's no work that you have to do to just hold your position at the top. You can tell that you're in a hurry to get out of that top position, right? You don't need to be. If you're locked out and everything's in, your entire axial skeleton is in compression and your hips and knees are in compression and your arms are in tension, then everything's just completely aligned with the gravitational field and stabilized by the normal force of the floor pushing up against your feet. And there is actually physically, mechanically, no work being done. So you can just stand there and hold on to the bar. I want you to cultivate that position and feel it, because that's the stable lockout that you want to have at the top.
And if you do that, what that means is that there's less of a chance for all the little facet joints in your spine to possibly shift and make those little pops, which is what that is when you feel it. There's less of a chance for that to occur, and so that brings down the chance of having another little tweak like that.
And then there's one more thing I would say about the tweakage here that he's reporting to us. And notwithstanding all the critiques that Noah and I have given you, because that's what we're doing, right? That's what the exercise is about, is for us to look and see what we can do to improve your lift. There's no way that we can know that any specific form error contributed to this re-injury. It may be that you re-injured it because you injured it at some point in time, and it's just a weak link. It is possible for you to do everything perfectly and sustain a tweak.
Yeah.
It's completely possible for that to happen. And by the way, I have the same exact problem. I have a little area, I call it an SI joint, but who knows what it is. I think it's a mistake for lifters, including those of us who are doctors, to try and diagnose a structural lesion. Right? Nowadays, like I used to call it my SI, I don't even care what it is anymore. I have something back there that I re-injure, just like you. Once a year, once every other year, I injure it. And when I go back and I look, the last time I did it, it laid me out. It was the worst time ever. And I had to take a knee, right? But when I look at the lift that precedes it, aside from being really heavy, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I don't think there was anything wrong with the pull. It's just, bodies. So don't beat yourself up too bad. You look like a good, strong lifter. Your technique is relatively good. There's a few things we would polish up. We really appreciate you submitting and letting us take a look at it. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next one now. So next we have Shauna. I know Shauna. She's not one of my clients, but her mother is. Her mother is 82, 83-year-old Odella.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I got your age wrong, Odella. It's hard to keep everyone straight. And Odella is an amazing, amazing lifter. And Shauna helps me coach her. They live in British Columbia. And Shauna coaches her and does her videos so that I can coach her online. But Shauna is quite a strong lady herself, and she responded to our plea for some videos to look at. So let's just go ahead and do that. So that's 265 pounds, and I don't think I have to tell anybody who's not a coach that was a very heavy lift for Shauna.
That's pretty good.
Her all-time PR is 285. This is a strong lady, and you probably can't tell from the video, but she's a lady of a certain age. So she's quite phenomenal. Really, really strong lady. So she doesn't send us any commentary and she doesn't ask any questions. She's just basically putting herself out there and letting us take pot shots. So I'm going to let this cycle through once. We'll rely on her editing.
So that top position that she just had, that's a great example for Matt. That's what I was talking about.
Right. So you can see Shauna sets up very, very deliberately, right? and she's not going to surprise her back. You can see her putting all the weight into her hands. Look at the slack in her arms, as in there isn't any, right? One place that I always look when people are setting up a deadlift, especially people I haven't coached, is I look at their wrists. And you'll see that their wrists will be extended, there'll be some slack. There's no slack in these wrists. So Shauna's putting all of the weight into her setup, all of the weight into her hands and arms, and all of the weight into her back. And there's no jerk off the floor, right? You can see that her back gives just a little bit as the bar comes off the floor, but not heinous. Mm-hmm. So she's got a pretty good setup. She pushes the earth straight away from her. She doesn't drop her hips. It's in the middle of the pull where you can see that she's wobbling around a little bit. She's kind of looking for her midfoot, her balance position a little bit. You can tell that the bar is fighting her balance. It's trying to pull her forward. And so she wobbles a little bit on the way up. Is that really a form error per se, or is it just phenotypical of a limit deadlift? Because this looks like almost a limit deadlift to me. And then she comes to an almost flawless lockout at the top, but not quite. And here I direct the viewer at the top of the deadlift to Shauna's knees, right? So if you look at her knees at the top of the pull, they're just a little bit soft, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit soft. So she doesn't quite lock out her knees. And so I agree that her lockout position is kind of something that Matt needs to emulate, except when it comes to the knees. And one more thing that I'll point out before I turn it over to you, Noah, is as heavy as this deadlift is, watch when it passes her knees. She does not hitch the bar, which is something that we see so frequently in people who are struggling with a super heavy deadlift. They'll project their knees forward underneath the bar. Well, I got it up this far, so now I'm going to protect the distance that I pulled the weight by projecting my knees forward under the bar and sort of supporting it there with my legs while I try to finish the pull. She doesn't do that.
With a heavy deadlift, it's very difficult to not do that. There's a lot of quad effort that has to go into straightening your legs out and keeping them straight while you then do the hip hinge to stand up.
Yeah.
So again, like you said, because this is pretty darn heavy for her, you can see how the bar's trying to roll her shoulders over. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to keep the knees straight. That last little bit, these are all just sort of hallmarks of a heavy deadlift for somebody. She's trying to not do those things, obviously, but that's just what you have to focus on with a heavy deadlift.
Actually, a very, very nice pull.
Yeah.
What would I specifically prescribe for her to work on? I always ask people to work on pulling their shoulders back into their hips and activating their lats and closing their armpits, all the better to keep the bar against the legs. That being said, the bar, I don't think ever loses contact with her legs.
No, it's held very close.
Very, very nice.
Yeah.
I would ask her to really focus on getting her knees locked out at the top. The rest of her lockout really is very nice. It's very phenomenal. Overall, this is a very strong pull, very nice technical pull by a strong lady. I think it's really well done, and there's just not a lot to pick on here.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's our maiden voyage at doing form checks with two pretty competent and relatively experienced lifters. Those of you who want to send us form check videos who maybe aren't as experienced, you might have a little bit more for us to pick on, but it will be done out of love and in the spirit of mutual support. Everybody starts from somewhere, and if you are generous enough and courageous enough to submit your videos for form check, and we think that there's good teaching points to be made, then we would appreciate that, and we'll always be respectful of your contribution. So if you want to send us your form check videos, there will be a link in the description. Make sure you follow the instructions exactly, otherwise we won't be able to use your video. And we thank you in advance. So bye for now.